discussing what kind of horror works and how to sell it, I guess. And then they're going to talk a little bit about themselves, get inside the mind of a horror author a little bit, I suppose. I am good. I'm good, but I will let all of you go and have a little fun with it. But let's first go with some introductions before I duck on out and let you guys take over the show. Starting to my, I don't know, left, right, ugly, whatever it is. Rob, let's go with you.
Oh, you're going to choose Ugly Boy first. Okay.
Well, we got to save Lisa the best for last.
Start with the worst horror. Okay. Well, introductions. Those who don't know, I'm Rob Shepherd. Probably nobody knows because I am the most niche horror person in the room, really. I write in all sorts of genre, but horror being the main one. I like my atmospheric and psychological horror, although my last two books have been in a kind of apocalyptic zombie sort of setting, but it's not zombie. It's much more the personal journey sort of kind of feel. But I've written other stuff. I've written some extreme horror lately, which I'm in a way kind of glad I'm getting away from and trying to get back to my roots of the psychological and atmospheric horror. And yeah, that's pretty much me. You can my last two books. That was the last one, which is Deaders, and that's a prequel to. I'll have to use this one, I believe. This is the old cover. This is pre-Terror Tract who took it up, but that's Semi-Animus. So that's the prequel. Deaders is there we go. Deaders is a short story collection, which I think makes it a bit unique in the field, really, because as far as I'm aware, it's one of, if not the only, one of the only very few prequels that are made up of short stories to make a prequel to a novel. But it's definitely the stories really set up what's happening and explain what's happening in Semi-Animus, and then which obviously there will be a third book to come, which I'm fearing might be a bit of a chunker, so I'm kind of terrified of that already. But they're the last two. And prior to that is a short novelette, I suppose you'd call it, or novella, whichever you preference, and that was My Girl. And that's more akin to sort of the atmospheric touch of psychological and sort of manipulating expectations in that one.
Who's going next? Sorry, I can't see the lineup.
Oh, sorry. Ed, you want to go next?
Sure, that's fine. Well, my name is Edmund Stone, and I've been writing horror really since about 2016. That actually stuff that I put out to try to publish. Before that, I mean, I go back to high school when I was writing horror. That's probably the first time I ever wrote it. My stuff ranges mostly supernatural. I use a lot of supernatural elements in most of mine. Extreme horror, definitely, but the supernatural element, it inevitably always works its way into my writing, and I can't seem to get it out of there because it always seems to make it. So, but I guess it's just something I like. I don't know, but there's always some ghost, and there's always some ghost trying to do something crazy and killing numerous people. So, that's kind of my take on thing. I do have this book. This is my book here. Can you see that? Lost Hope. I don't know if you see it very well or not. Anyway, that's the one I have with Terror Tract right now. I have several short stories with them too. Before that, I had two short story collections. They're on my website at edmundstoneauthor.com. But the first one I pretty much, well, both of them I did on my own. They're self-published. I would like to do, I mean, I'm working on actually a series. I've got a novel coming up soon. I'm calling it Tent Revival. And it's set in a crazy little backward town, which is pretty much where I live. So it's not the name of the town that's in the novel, but if you lived here, you would probably think you were there. And a whole host of characters and a lot of supernatural stuff in that one too. Extreme horror gets into there. It's the start of a 3 to maybe 4 book series that's going to be coming out over the next hopefully next year or two. But it's been fun. And that novel I wrote probably actually drafted it about 2 years ago, and the last few months I've been rewriting and fixing it and working on it and doing all kinds of great stuff. And it's been an adventure getting back in touch with a lot of those characters that I'd kind of forgotten about. And then realizing that a couple of them, well, at least one, kind of reminded me of myself, and I really don't even know why, but but that kind of happened, and got to see a little bit of retrospection there. So, but it's been really fun doing that, and I'm new to a lot of this stuff, but hopefully going forward and growing that fan base and keeping it going.
Thank you, Aaron.
So I'm Aaron Lebold. I have one with Terror Tract called Genocide, which just came out this year. And I have a book before that called, Quarantine is with Terror Tract, and Genocide was the one before that. I've got a bunch of short stories as well, and a few anthologies and that kind of stuff. Try to do that as much as possible to get the work out there. I've got another one slated with Terror Tract for probably the end of the summer. And that's actually my first try at something with a supernatural element. All my stuff is more kind of based in reality, like obviously a little far-fetched, but based in reality. So the supernatural element was new to me, and it was kind of fun. So I don't know. That's pretty much it.
All right, Derek.
Hi, I'm Derek Austin Johnson. I've written in a variety of different genres. I was a science fiction writer before I actually decided to turn my hand to horror in 2017. And I have stories with Terror Tract and a few other diverse publications. Generally, what I write is, I'm going to say it's surreal, almost Lynchian horror. I tend to veer towards people like, Franz Kafka, Thomas Ligotti, that crowd, taking reality and twisting it about 15 degrees off of what we normally expect. This is why I tend to stick to short fiction, because you can maintain that suspension of disbelief in a story that's under, say, 7,500 or 10,000 words. A novel is much trickier to sustain. Having said that, I am actually trying to work on a couple of novels right now, and because I'm in my 50s, and this is the first time I've actually tried something that's going to be longer than, say, 10,000 words. Panic has set in several times. We'll see how all of that goes. So.
All righty. And last but not least, of course, is our Lisa Marie Wood. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. So I'm Elmarie Wood. I have been a psychological horror author since I was 5. So sounds like longer than everybody on here. But yeah, I've always known that I like the twist on reality quite a bit. I mean, I do have supernatural elements, but that's also depending upon what you've grown up knowing, that can be a twist on reality as well. And I unlike Derek, 10,000 words, for me, a short story is short, and 10,000 words is not short. So, and so that's difficult for me. So I can write novels or short stories. And by short stories, I mean, my sweet spot's about 1,500 words or less. So when I have to do something that's a 10,000 word piece, I'm quite nervous about it. I do have a book. I picked up a book this time. This is my most recent release called The Realm. It is the start of a series, which is new for me. So this book came out in October, and this part 2 will be out this October. I with Cedar Grove Publishing, and I've got a couple more titles coming out from them this year. They're actually going to be putting out the Promise Keeper, which is my second novel, and it's getting a brand spanking new cover. It's a vampire psychological horror book, which is fun, and it won the Golden Stake Award in 2019, so I'm kind of proud of that. A couple of titles coming out from Falstaff this year, actually next year, 2022, we decided on that. That's going to be like a really neat combination of novella and short story collection, that the short story collection is actually featured in the novella. It's kind of neat. So I'm excited about that. I do have another piece coming out, which is just a straight up novella coming out in May from Mocha Memoirs Press. So this is like publishing year for me, and I'm pretty pumped about it.
All right. Well, I just want to dive right into it here and let you guys take right over and have a really nice discussion. I saw you guys last night's show was absolutely excellent. It was one of the better ones I attended and was able to listen in on. So I want to let you guys kind of just dive right in there a little bit and just kind of tell us what kind of horror writing sells in your opinions, and also how do I want to say it differently. I'm sorry. We'll start with that. We'll go with the first question, and I'll let you guys lead into the other.
I have an opinion on that real quick, if I can. I think all of it can sell, to be honest, right? I mean, being on the quieter side of the genre, I think that when people think of horror fiction, they're thinking more of the extreme horror stuff, or the identifiable beast, if you will, right? They're thinking that kind of stuff instead of the psychological kind of quiet stuff that I write. So it's interesting. I mean, I hate to put it like in my mind, my first thought is that my side's getting dragged along with the other side, but dragged isn't what I mean. I mean, a person who's looking into horror fiction might have come in looking for extreme stuff, blood, gore, evisceration, etc., and then find something that's psychological that might have some of the elements of the other, but not as much, and get turned on to something brand new. So I think that there's room for all of it, to be frank. I haven't found a genre that I haven't seen that was marketable within our subgenre.
I'd like to pick up on some of that as well. You mentioned, when people think of horror these days, they're usually thinking about the extreme stuff. When I was a kid, I did not associate with horror at all because I grew up in the 1980s. If you said horror, you meant slasher, you meant Halloween, you meant Friday the 13th, you meant The Burning, and however many imitators you could find. If you were like me and you liked monsters, if you liked something that had a high fantasy element, if you had something that what sort of bridged that line between the liminal world and the and the supernatural, nobody really paid much attention to that, and because of that, horror, I think that to this day horror still gets a kind of rap. Nobody, talk to most people. If you talk to most people who read, who watch movies, they will be very clear in that they absolutely hate horror. They will use those words. Having said that, everybody, while most people hate horror, everybody loves at least one horror story.
Yeah.
Just as an example, my father-in-law has no real interest in horror, but two of his favorite works are The Turn of the Screw and Picture of Dorian Gray.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I agree with you that there's stuff out, all that stuff is out there. How to sort of get it to those people, that's, I think, the biggest challenge.
Mhm, mhm.
Mhm.
I kind of think, can you hear me? I kind of think it might be, in my opinion, I think it's the characters that actually actually build the story. I mean, if you have a horror element in there, and even if there's some extreme horror and whatever, if you have a really strong character or a group of characters that can really push that story forward, then you'll sell it on. I mean, you know, if somebody starts to read it, they'll like it for that reason alone. I think Stephen King, all his characters, I mean, he has like so many good, memorable characters, and they're strong characters. So, in my opinion, when I write, I always try to. The first thing I do is I come up with a cast of characters, and I try to build those characters, and I try to make them what I think would be real people in real situations. Then add that horror element to it, and it typically works for me that way. So, but I like strong characters. That's what I think really gets it going for me.
Just to talk about what Derek said too about the genre is like, I'm from that era too. Like I was born in 1980, and I remember there seeming like only a few genres. And now with everything, with music, with books, with everything, it's like all these genres have like collided together. And it's, I didn't realize how many genres there were until I started actually writing. And it's like trying to submit to places like, what is the genre of your book? Like, it could be that, it could be that, it could be that. I don't know. So, I mean, as far as that goes, I wouldn't say any specific genre would go. I think it's just like, I mean, writing is an art like everything else. And I think if you write a good book, somebody's going to like it. You know what I mean? There's people that, you know what I mean, are better than others, like any other thing. You know what I mean? Music or anything, making movies, writing books. It's the same thing. There's people that are naturally skilled at it. And if you can tell a good story and, like you said, make a good character, and I think people will find interest in it, and it could sell. I think everything has the potential to sell if it's, you know, but the marketing element, I don't know. I'm struggling with that. So I can't really tell you if my work makes money or not, because I don't know if I'm getting it into the right hands. So, yeah.
Well, me speaking personally, I'm pretty much the last person to speak on what sells, because I mean, I must sell about a year. So, but to my mind, I mean, the whole idea of what actually sells, again, is subjective as to what people are after. But it's also, I think, from me personally as an author, it's the wrong way for me to approach writing, thinking about what sells. Because for me, it's just, I'm going to sit down, if I've got an idea and I start that and it starts developing, I just let the story tell itself. And that story can go in any number of ways and go in any number of directions, and it can traverse any number of genres until it finds, until the final last word on is told. And then, then you got to make some decisions to what genre you think. But I'm pretty open. I never decide a genre, and I never decide what's going to happen. I'll let it happen. So to think of what sells is going to be counterproductive for me, because, as I say, it's subjective. What sells somewhere is not going to sell somewhere else, and what some people think is good, what other people will think are terrible. So it's like you say, it's as long as if you put your heart and your soul into it, and you're paying attention to what you're doing, and you're feeling it. You've got to feel the story. You've got all manner of tools at your disposal, from editors and proofreaders and everybody that can help you polish that work. So long as you're putting everything, and you're really feeling the work, and you really feel the passion for it, that's what's going to show. For me, I don't know how many I sell. I know I'm pretty much lower than most people, but I don't care. That's not the point to me. The point is, I've got this story I want to tell, and if one reader picks that up, and that one reader loves the story, as far as I've done my job. I'm happy as Larry, whoever Larry is, but I'm ecstatic that Derek picks up and they really enjoyed it. I've done what I wanted to do. I've achieved what I wanted to achieve, and that's make someone else happy. And when it comes to my work, like you said, Leslie, it comes back to what you're putting into it and the atmosphere and what you're trying to do. And going back, I like to, one of the things I say to people with my work is I like to take the monsters from the shadows. I want to take those monsters out of the shadows and present them to you. I want you to remember the monsters that are in the shadows, they're in the cupboard, they're under your bed. And so I want to take them out and give them a voice. And the whole purpose is to scare you, of course. That's what I'm going to do. I want to scare you. But I'm not going to do it just by going, there's a guy there with a honking great knife and he's searching down for you. I'm going to say there are things here in normal life and the monsters are not necessarily what or who you think they are. And so I like to flip them over. The monster, when you're seeing it, the person being terrified can necessarily be that monster, not the thing that's under the bed waiting or cowering, and it's taking those elements, and if you're running with them and you really feel that and you feel what you're doing, it's going to present itself when the person picks up that book or picks it up from wherever, whether it's on Kindle or whatever, and they'll start picking it up from the first time they start reading the first few lines or the first few paragraphs. They'll start to pick up if you're passionate about the work. If you're effectively just phoning it in, people have just put it away again. I've done it myself. I've picked up books that were cheap and I've realized that the author was phoning it in because they just wanted to get another book out there. They want to get another story out there, and they're looking at what's selling. They're seeing what's on there and going, oh, well, this is selling, so I'll just hash something in this, a ghost story or whatever it is. A case in point being not so long ago, there was a really big deal over creepy dolls and haunted dolls and stuff like that, with a nod and a wink to Chucky and whatever, and it got up the China dolls and stuff, and that went crazy. And then all you've seen were these books about creepy haunted dolls and whatever. And I'll pick up a book and I was like, you know what? I've just got no interest, because you could read that they just wanted to get in on that. And I'm not interested in that. I'm interested in telling the stories. If I've got a story about a haunted doll, I'm going to present it in the only way I know how. And I'm going to let the story tell itself. And if I'm invested in that, if I get really start to love those characters, then I'm on there and I'm really running with it. And it's just going to keep telling, the story's going to keep quicker and quicker until I'm finished. Mm-hmm. And then once I'm done, I can say, right, I can walk away and I can go and get it edited and then come back from it and then present it. Because even with limited editing, I'll then know that that's, for me, going to be a better quality of work than someone going, well, such and such is selling right now, I'm going to throw something out. Mm-hmm. And, you see a lot on Amazon where they've just got it out, constant free, on the free all the time. You think, well, that might be, a good book, but it's just putting it out for free all the time, every week. So what are you saying about your work, that it's not worth being paid for? So, I mean, that's from my perspective. I mean, I'll write something and I'll put my passion in, and then if people want to buy it, they will buy it. And if they don't, they don't. I'm not going to concern myself with that. And don't think as a writer that people should be focusing on what sells. I'm crap at marketing, so my only way of marketing is to pretty much take the mickey out myself and just throw stuff up and do whatever and show what a prat I am. And if that enables some people to go, I kind of like that. I kind of like that weirdo dude. I might see what his books are like. Well, that's fantastic, and it's the only marketing I've got available to me. So I'll just use it.
You make a good point, Rob, about what sells is relative, right? I mean, back in the 80s and 90s, what sells, we weren't picking genres, no, specifically. I mean, I know that when I had an agent way back when, they were attempting to have me write a different genre, because that was, like you said, Rob, people were buying that at the time, and all these stories were coming out in this thriller genre, and take the supernatural out. Don't write the psychological horror stuff. Let's take this whole book and throw it out. And you write something else in a different genre, because that's what's selling now. And I didn't pick that genre, and I didn't do well with that genre because it's not my genre, right? It's just not my voice. And you're right. When you have a passion for writing, it's going to come through in the work. But I think sometimes, and I don't know what you guys think about this, I wonder, because I think it's because I do sit on the quieter side. So there's a lot of, some of the subgenres in horror are close to each other. Whereas me, the psychological horror, I'm closer to thrillers and suspense and mystery than I am to any extreme horror distinction, which is messed up, because if I do put some in, then if my readers are looking specifically for psychological psychological horror only, then they're going to be confused why there's guts hanging out and something in mine, right? But not to minimize it, but I think that the beauty of when we think about extreme horror, or I mean there's some, what are it, 30 to 35 subgenres in ours at this point in horror, and cosmic horror, and we could go through a list if we wanted to. But when you think about the beauty of cross genre writing and how it actually makes sense even within the overarching the genre, because you can be cross genre within subgenres, right?
But yeah,
That's when if you're forced to put a pinpoint onto what do I write, you almost, I mean, like, for example, let me say this. I have a reader read my novel that it's part 2 of a series that hasn't even come out yet, not this series. And she called that book a parallel romance, biopunk, space exploration, romance horror series. I don't even know what half those words mean together in that sentence. And I was like, but it's cool because it's not just this one thing, right? It's not, and none of us write just the one thing. I mean, you can't, I mean, really, to write only one thing over and over and over and over. Stephen King doesn't write only one thing. No one does. So to think that we're going to be pigeonholed into this one distinction instead of sort of embracing a cross-genre approach is a little, concerning. So like for me, when I read anything extreme, especially if the book is just solely extreme, I can't, for me, if it's only extreme and there are no other elements, that changes my interest level. But at the same time, if it is a space exploration science fiction book and there are no other elements, it changes my interest level, right? There's layers. I want there to be layers in my reading. And so therefore, as Rob indicated, when I write, I'm writing from the heart and I'm giving you exactly the story that I wanted to give you. And that story has 75 layers in it. So that means you can go ahead and pick this cross-genre mashup that you're, you can't find a name for. Why not just call it cross-genre? Because I would submit that most books are cross-genre.
Yeah, I think it's kind of...
Go ahead. I'm sorry, Aaron. Go ahead.
Oh, it's okay. I'm kind of with you guys on that too. Like, I didn't even realize how many genres and subgenres, and it never even crossed my mind. I just had a story in mind and went with it. And I didn't even consider myself a horror writer really at first, but I think that's kind of where I found that I feel the most comfortable. Plus, I mean, horror people are more my kind of people, so can relate a little bit more. And it's just a community that I've always enjoyed, and I've always loved horror. I love slasher, but I don't write slasher. Like, mine's more got the psychological elements of it too, just because, I don't know, I like to make people more scared internally, as like, I don't know, psychologically afraid, as opposed to like afraid, if that makes any sense. I don't know. Just like to mess with people's minds, I guess.
Well, of course, it makes sense to me, Aaron. I'm like, yes, of course.
I mean, that's why I play around with atmosphere so much, with the sense of foreboding and just something in the air. You get that feeling that something's creeping around, but you don't know what it is, where it is, what it looks like. You just get that sense and the tingling sense, and I like playing around with that. And then, my writing style spans across horror, and I'm constantly, I that's why it's difficult, I think, for people to really narrow down where my books are setting, because they're blurring the lines between the subgenres of horror, and then sometimes blurring the line between horror and thriller, or so they don't quite know where to put me in horror, and they don't quite know where to put me outside of horror. I keep blurring the lines, and that's because I'm not focusing on a particular genre or subgenre. I'm not focusing on where I want it to be. I'm focusing on letting the story tell itself. Once I've got an idea, I'm just letting it go. So I mean, the best description I ever had for mine, I think it was amusing, and I think it's quite apt for me, is because of that blurring of the lines and everything. I got caught. Someone said to me their description for me was trans genre, and I thought, you know what, I'll take that. I'll take that quite happily, because it's when I was saying, because you get this thing with so many people, like say multi-genre, and then they go, and then all these other different descriptions that people like to put on YouTube because they don't know where they think you should sit as an author. And when someone said trans genre, I went, yes, fine, because I've written extreme horror. It's not my forte, but it's something I want. I did the short stories to challenge myself, because that's not where I sit. I sit, like yourself, in psychological and atmosphere and emotional horror. That's where I'm most comfortable. That's where I seem to write most freely. But I wanted to challenge myself, because then I could develop that skill set where a situation might need a bit of extreme in terms of the situation, or in terms of reaction of characters and the characterization. I can then slip that in there and continue without getting stuck for direction in the story. So I mean,
actually, go ahead. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to.
No, it's okay. Carry on.
No. I just wanted to pick up on what you were saying. I think that's one of the strengths as well. If you're trying to do very different things, with each story. I know, just from my own standpoint, if I try to do the same thing I did in a couple of stories ago, I'm going to get bored very easily. You were talking, Rob, about, you can tell when an author is phoning it in. You can also tell when you yourself are phoning it in. If I get bored with something 2 pages in, then I don't want to pursue it, because if I'm bored with it, I know a reader is going to be bored with it.
Yeah, you tend to just walk away from it, don't you? You just, all right, that's it. And you just leave it saved on the computer for another day. I've got tons of those stories. I've had fantastic ideas. I've gone, this is going to be great. And I go to start writing them, and I go, and you're phoning it, and then I don't know where I'm going with this.
Yeah.
And then you think, oh, fuck it. And it goes on. And I'll go back to something else. And I'll suddenly start getting 300, 400, 500 words out, something like that. And then, even like say if it's just 400, 500 words, or, if I've done all that, I'm quite happy with that, because that's 400, 500 words I would not have got out in that other story, because I didn't know where I was going with it. It just, I had the passion was there, the urgency to want to write it wasn't there. So, like I say, I've just gone, well, bollocks, I'm not doing it. That can stop. And then I've got, I must have deleted about 30 ideas that have been in little folders, and they'll give them a little title just to sort of jog my memory what I wanted from it, and it's all like, and I'll look through it and I go, no, delete. And I've got hundreds of bits of paper everywhere with ideas on, and most of these will just end up in a bin somewhere, because once I go through them and I go, what was the point of that? It's just, because sometimes you suddenly remember where the idea is from, and then you start seeing the influences, and you go, no, that's just, again, I'm writing that down. Think at the time it seemed like a fantastic idea, but then you're realizing you're just copying what's out. Why are you going to do that for? And it's just, and it goes back to that. Oh, this genre is popular at the moment. This type of story is popular at the moment. I'm going to throw a story out. And so when I come across that, and I think, it's been done before, and I think, if it's been done before, can I do it any better?
Right.
Likelihood is, if something's been done before and it's sold really well, the likelihood of you doing any better than that, not generally going to happen. You're just going to be another copy. And so if I think I'm just going to be another copy of something that's already out, already I'm not interested, and it'll just be in the bin. Let's work on something else.
But you know, to add a little bit there, if as a writer though, I mean, we have our heads down, we're doing our work, whether it's short stories or novels or whatever it is, and we're just cranking information and thoughts and, you know, producing work. But it is kind of interesting sometimes to write in a subgenre that's not your own. You know, I mean, just try and see if you can pull it off. Like, I didn't write zombies, but I have this one zombie story that I wrote that I'm like, that, you know, I had fun and it was kind of interesting. And, you know, and it was not easy because I don't write zombies, right? I don't read zombies very much. I've only like watched a few zombie things because, I mean, honestly, to me, I'm like, okay, I know what's going to happen, you know, so I just don't watch a lot of zombie stuff. But I tried it and it was cool. I had a good time. I tried extreme horror. I don't think I'm very good at that. But I mean, because it's nasty. I mean, y'all, it's great, but it's nasty. It's nasty. It's awesome, but nasty. And I can't. And I also don't like monsters, like actual like monsters. Like I don't know. That's like, if I saw it in the dark, yeah. I mean, of course, if I saw that in the dark, it would scare me. But reading it, I'm like, okay. You know, so but I tried that too. And it was fun. It was kind of fun. So I think that even though, you know, we all kind of write what we know, we write what we like. Not so much what we know, but we write what we like, right? And we all, you know, if you're depending on, even if your tastes are varied, you still kind of like, even if I'm varied, I still want to freak you out a little, like psychologically. That's kind of what I want to do. Like I told you, my second novel is a vampire psychological horror story. It's not just a vampire. There's psychological horror here, and it was cool. That's what I do. But stretching your legs, that's also kind of cool. You know what I mean? Like Derek, you said you're writing a novel now. Like that's awesome. That's awesome to have gone ahead and decided. I wrote a stage play 2 years ago, but right before the current unpleasantness, I had casted this thing. Oh my gosh, we were gonna go. We were like doing it. I had time at a theater that's local to me. We were going to do this, and then you know what happened. But I had never written anything like that before. It was kind of fun. It's different. It's different than even writing screenplays. I mean, I'm a screenwriter also, but that's different. It's still very different. So
I've only ever done one screenplay, and
I've written a bunch of them. I've gotten lucky recently with that. But what are you pulling your screen? Oh, I knew it was going to happen now.
You knew it, didn't you?
I did. But you know, I mean, I've done that, and then we had a dry run here at my home because you know I wasn't going to use the theater time, but you know, all this is money. I'm not using the theater time when I have a perfect enough room. We can just go ahead and do it here and run it through. And it was interesting how like because forget the novelist and short story writer, you can't apply that to screenwriting and stage play. Just forget that. But the screenwriter in me was almost too clipped and cut and dried and not telling, because that's not what the stage needs. You need a little more. And so when we were running through it and I'm watching these actors do their thing and I'm loving it, first of all, and then I was like, wait a minute, wait. There's like 5 things we didn't do. And they're like, it doesn't say that. I'm like, you know, it sure doesn't. So we had to go back to the drawing board, and like really, it was cool because I was making the edits in real time and then they would act it out. It was like awesome. I'm just saying, if you can stretch your legs and try something new, you might find that some of these subgenres were like, I write this, I only write this. You might dabble in those other ones and find something you enjoy. So if there are any writers listening to our panel tonight, I want to say that point. This is the perfect time to, you know, sort of see what you can do and play around.
It also keeps your writing fresh.
Yeah.
It does, and I think it does this on 2 levels. One, it allows you to flex creative muscles that you otherwise would not flex. But, and this is to sound somewhat mercenary, but when you have a, you know, we have a horror there's a rise in horror wombat stories, and all of a sudden you're, wait, I have a horror wombat story, so bam, done. You know, it's not something you necessarily want to follow, but it is something that, you know, a few years ago, I thought of this, and this somehow, is going to work for this particular market.
Last year, I was asked by another author to collaborate on a novel, and it was a YA thriller. And I was like, I have never even come close to anything like that. I don't even know how to do that, And so he started with me, and I started adding, and I came up with some pretty decent characters. So I thought, this has got to work with these characters. But ended up finishing the novel and just was really surprised that I was able to do a young adult thriller. I never even thought that was even possible. Then started writing another one, a Nano. I just rough drafted. It'll be out a lot later, but I started doing a thriller, an actual crime thriller. I watched crime shows for like 3 weeks straight, and then just jumped in and started writing this. And it's very interesting. It's surprising, but then the supernatural thing starts creeping in there a little bit. So, but that's okay. So it's going to end up being a thriller with some supernatural elements. But there you go.
I think
Our
that
voice always comes through. I don't think we can avoid it. What were you saying, Aaron?
yeah, I think that there's a lot of to just being a writer, like the talent of being a writer. Like if you think of someone who's like a musician and they play guitar, if you gave them an accordion and they know how to play notes and they know how to do stuff, they could probably figure it out. So I think that speaks a lot, Ed, to like, just the ability that you have as a writer, if you're able to take a genre that's not your own and kind of use the skills you have to kind of not fake your way through it, but you know what I mean?
Yeah.
To make it come across like it's, you know what I mean?
It is, I think
It's
sometimes,
really surprising.
I think especially with short stories are a great example of that, where you're, like you said, with using the analogy of the musician, where they take someone else's song and they make it their own. And short stories are a great way of doing that with in our world, where you can take something that's popular or whatever and done before, and you can just sit there and you think, right, okay, and then you think of a different situation in which that same sort of thing is happening, and then you sort of go, well, what happened if? And then you're taking that story, but you're then telling it in your own way. So you're taking that song and you're still singing the same song, but in a completely different way. Like you say, there's been, when you get like heavy metal artists covering songs from pop artists and vice versa, you still can hear the original song in them, but it's done in a completely different way. And when it's done with the passion that we're talking about and they're really into it, then it sounds so much better than it would have done if they'd have just gone, all right, I'm just going to copy it. And it's the same with the stories. Once you get inspired by something, you can tell that same story, but you tell it in your own way, in your own language, as you would do it. Even though people might recognize it as being similar to, or it's this story, but it's told in from a fresh perspective, and they appreciate that, and people respect that. And that's why I like short stories, where I can take something that's maybe been told before, turn it on its head, say, right, I'm going to tell the story, but I might tell it from the opposite direction, turn it upside down, and just see it from, go backwards from the end, and then see, go from that way. And then often, that's what people are looking for in short fiction, and it's a great way of improving the skill set, because you're seeing where the original author was going with it. You can see what they were doing with it, and then you're seeing little things that maybe you would have liked to have been in that original story. So then you're adding those elements yourself and just kind of retelling the story, but extending it out. And other people are just seeing new things in that story. And obviously you also give an acknowledgement to these authors that they might pick up straight away, but in a way you're giving as a musician you're giving the credits to that, because you're saying, look, I love your work, so I covered it. And as an author, you're going, I loved your book, or I loved your story, so I've done my version.
Mm-hmm. I think that's what's cool about sorry, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, it's like listening to, the Rolling Stones Satisfaction, and you hear it for that guitar riff, you hear it for Mick Jagger, and then you hear Devo covering it, and it is so jarring, but it's so good. I'm sorry, Aaron, please go ahead.
Oh, that's okay. I was just want to touch on the short story thing. Personally, I've found that they're a lot of fun, and just kind of like what you're saying too, Rob, about like these anthologies that'll have a theme. They'll be like, this is the theme of it, and it kind of makes you think in a different way that you normally would. But then also when you read the anthology, it's like seeing everybody else's perspective and the way they took the same subject and kind of made it their own. So when I first started writing, I didn't really think short stories was going to be a thing that I did a lot of, but I kind of like when I write a book, I'll take a break and do short stories for a while, just do some searches for anthologies, find whatever I could possibly find. And, I like that challenge of like, there's one like, oh, do one that takes place in the future. Like, oh, okay. Not really anything I would have thought to do, but sure, I'll do it. You know what I mean? Like just stuff like that. It's just kind of cool. Just kind of give you like a point for a news, and then you kind of go from there with what you would have normally wanted to do. So yeah, I think it's pretty cool.
I would also add that if you're primarily a novelist, that's great. But I would always encourage to keep writing short stories, because they keep your writing pointed. They keep they require different muscles for you to flex. They require a sort of different outlook for what you're doing.
Yeah, kind of a different pace too, right? Like I write pretty fast paced, so like for a short story, it's a little bit different to try to come up with the plot, build the characters, and have a wrap up where normally you would have like 2 chapters. You know what I mean? Yeah. So it's a different challenge, but like since I started doing it, I enjoy it. It's a lot of fun because you can just like one of those little ideas that you get. It's like that's a cool idea, but I don't know if I could stretch it into a novel. But you can definitely make it into a short story and have it have the impact you're looking for, right? So I think they're pretty cool.
I think my wildest ideas come out in short fiction, in short stories. When I'm telling, if I'm doing a short story, whether it be for an anthology or whatever, that's when the wildest stories come out. Okay, because you, like you say, it's fast paced, so you're going to have up to a certain limit. So you're moving the story along on much faster pace and much quicker. And so everything happens in a much more crazy and chaotic way. So everything gets much more wild. And I think the wild, that's why I enjoy popping back to the short stories, because you can just be absolutely wild with it and get the craziest ideas and just go, I'm going to just tell it. It makes no sense, and no one, you don't know where it's going to go. It's just, everything's happening and you're not quite sure what's going to happen come the end, but when that end comes because it starts screaming at you, I'm about here. So you sort of go, right, I've got to wrap this up now, because you kind of think, if I don't, it's going to just keep dragging on. Then I'm just going to go, ugh, get bored with it. So you push yourself to get the end, and then suddenly it's like done. You go, excellent. And it's often that it is what it is. I'm now going to leave that for example, for the editor of the anthology to go through and just, polish off or, pick up what doesn't need to be there. And that's what I like to do. I say to, some of you know, I'd say to Becky, I'll pass up saying, right, you got a ton of editing to do, but here it is. There's going to be packs in here where you can just cut a whole sheath of stuff out, but this is it. And I'm giving it to you now because I don't want to touch it now, because I'm going to be too pussy, and I'm like, I can't touch any of this. I can't, So it's like, there you go, away you go. But it's fun because you can just be wild with them, and it's harder to be wild with a novel, because you're often thinking about the structure, you're often thinking about the direction, and you're thinking about the interaction, and then you're thinking about a character that you introduced so far back, and you're like, well, I haven't done anything with, what are they doing? I've got to bring them back again. I've got to tell, the people want a character to come in and out, and if they're going to come out, they got to know what happens to them if they're not going to appear in the book anymore. And so you got to start tying things up, and that kind of stops you being crazy and wild with the story, because you're having to make the thing make sense, and allow people to go, okay, so such and such has died. You can say that they're dead, but people are going to go, well, how did they die? So you got to explain that. But in the short story, you can just go, they're dead, and this is how.
Rob, stop! You're
okay.
scaring Derek. You're scaring Derek. He's starting a novel. You're terrifying him now.
I mean, in fairness, the terror I'm feeling about trying to work on a novel, I started this a couple of years ago, and I had a very vague idea where it was going, and I finally realized a couple of months ago that I'm going to have to deep six most of it, because the protagonist was too passive. The most active character in the novel doesn't show up until about halfway through. I'd completely written out, there was a guy I had a prologue, and he doesn't show up at all afterwards. And I'm going, no, there were so many. Yeah, I mean, there were so many structural problems that it's better to just sort of, bathe yourself in blood and start a ritual fire of the manuscript and just go and start again.
I did mine complete opposite. I typically they tell you, which I'm not a plotter. I always pants everything, but they tell you, plot out your thing, get it all ready, get everything the way you want it, all this stuff. Well, I didn't do that. I just jumped right in and did it. And then after I went back to rewrite it, I pretty much deconstructed it, and then plotted it. So it's just all mixed up. But it's been an experience.
Yeah,
I've never plotted a book out ever. That's not really my personality type. I don't really plan ahead that much. Just kind of start with the idea and go with it. And then sometimes I'll write things that I don't really even know where they're going to go. But then later when I'm writing, it's like, oh, you know what? That makes sense to connect back with that. And I don't know.
Yeah,
it's kind of weird.
I write my own stories. There's a term for this.
When he was writing Man in the High Castle, he would come to a point and then he'd consult his I Ching and then move to however his direction needed to be. Now I have my I Ching, but my eyes start to gently bleed anytime I try to make sense of the hexagrams. So I've got a magic 8-ball. So that's what we're going to use to help me plot this thing. So.
Whatever
I was
works.
going to say that when I'm writing short stories, especially since I like to do them really, literally really short, I start in the middle of the action. I mean, I kind of like that anyway. I kind of hit the ground running and everybody's running with me. So that's just where we go. There's a term for it. And I've just gone ahead and decided that I'm a pantser and I write everything in media res. Fine.
There you go.
That's me.
You have to accept your truth.
That's me. Whether it's a novel or a short story, it's panced from the beginning to the end. I don't have a structure. I don't have a plot line. I don't have a character breakdown and everything else. I just know what I want. I've just got that loose idea from the beginning. The only thing I write down is that initial idea, and then I'll type that up, and then the rest will just come, and then the characters will just come, and the names will come. And if I have trouble with a name, I think, what kind of name suits them, whatever. I'll just go, you know what? I'm just going to get random name generator up on Google, and there you go. That'll do. I don't care if it seems, the most inappropriate name for it, or it doesn't make any sense for them to have that name. I don't care. They're having that name anyway, because I'm not going to think of anything better. And if someone else can think of anything better, fine. If they buy the book and you can scrub out their name with your little pen and write your own name in if you like, I don't care. But it's just going to
the one time I actually cared about the naming, any kind of naming, I was writing a story for an anthology. It was basically a very Texas horror story, and I decided to be over cute. And to this day, everybody here will know this. Nobody has ever picked up on it, but every character in the novel, in that story, is taken from a county in the state of Texas. The lead character's name is Angelina Harris, and there is an Angelina County and a Harris County.
Oh my goodness. Oh my god.
Yeah.
I never really put too much thought into my names either. I use a lot of people that I know, or just because that's what happens. Like my one book I wrote pretty much at work, and a lot of the people's names are my coworkers' names, just because.
I've done that before.
Yeah, the characters are nothing like people, but you know.
The 6 of them are getting killed off in chapter 2 anyway.
Yeah.
So I've only got about 6 people left in my work as it is, because everybody's off with illness and COVID or whatever. So if I kill 6 people off from that's my whole entire workforce gone.
Yeah. Yeah, I killed my supervisor. I was like, "You're gonna be in my book, and I'm gonna kill you." And she's like, "I don't know." Went for it. So
The best
sure
one
it's
I
flattering
was
to the
supervisor was my novella, The Caretaker, and my supervisor, my line manager at the time, they found out that I wrote books, and they said, okay, so he picked it up and read it, and I never knew that he'd done that until he came over to my section where the site I was working, and he came up to me, he says, "I fucking hate you, you son of a bitch." And I went, what have I done now? Because normally I'm in trouble for something, but yeah, it's like, I've had 2 weeks where I've been good. What have I done in these 2 weeks? And he's like, this, and he shows me the book like that. He says, "Thank you very much." I was, "What?" He says, "Now I cannot go into a high-rise building ever." He said, "I can't do it now
It's in the
because I'm
closet.
paranoid."
Yeah.
So, and it's
Plug
like,
it in.
I know exactly the point in that book that's got him. He said, "I can't use left." I said, "I can't walk down a set of stairs in a high-rise building because," and he goes around, I went, "I know exactly what it is." And I just played the sound. I was like, the clink, 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 near it, down the railings. He went, "Yep, that's it." I went, "Yeah, don't worry." I said, "If you hear that sound," he said, it's probably me. Probably. But, you know. And he went, I'm done. I'm done with it.
I come up with the weakest names first every time, and they're almost always the same weak. Like I'll write John, and then I'm like, no, I said that already like 5 times. I've used John 5 times. Okay, Patrick. No. I used Patrick in the last book. Okay, I don't know any guys' names. Robert? What? I mean, I'm like, why can't I come up with something unique? No. And I have to tell myself, you use that same name 75 times. So you gotta fix
I
it.
think Rob is right. A random name generator is your friend. Always.
Maybe that.
The
That
book
or
I'm
there's,
reading right now the guy's name is Seamus.
that or there's one bad guy in your life named John that just gets hacked to shit.
Right?
So, all right, guys, I got to cut it a little short here. Well, it's not really short because we went a little bit over, but we want to get over to LitCon Lounge so we can wrap this up. You guys have been a ball. Thank you so very much for coming on board with LitCon. And thanks for another great panel. But I want to give you a couple of minutes. Each one of you go around the room. This time we're going to be the gentlemen, and we're going to start with ladies first. Tell us your name, your website, and where you can find your books, and where we can stalk you legally on social media.
Cool. Well, again, I'm Elmarie Wood. You can find me at elmariewood.com. You can also find me at Facebook at facebook.com/elmariewood. Also on Twitter at elmariewood1. And all my books are on Amazon right now.
All right, Derek.
Oh, good. Age Before Beauty for the rest of them. Okay, great. You're welcome. I'm DerekAustinJohnson.com. That's my website. I'm on Twitter and Instagram at DAJ42. I am on Facebook at simply Derek Austin Johnson. You know, if you find me, great. If you can't, sorry.
All right, Aaron.
It's Aaron Lebold, and I have Instagram and is Aaron Lebold Author. I don't have a webpage. Our Facebook page is Aaron Lebold Blogs, and my work, Genocide and Quarantine, and a bunch of anthologies are all on Amazon.
All righty, Edmund.
Yeah, I'm Edmund Stone. My website is edmundstoneauthor.com. I'm on Facebook at edmundstoneauthor.com. I think it's what it is. And Edmund Stone. Just look up Edmund Stone on Facebook. I have an author's page and a personal page on there. Twitter is Edmund Stone HWR, and Instagram is Edmund Stone 69. And my books can be all found on Amazon.
All righty. And last but not least, Robert.
Yeah, I'm Rob Shepherd. You find me on Facebook, official Rob Author. You can find me on Twitter, which is Rob_Shepherds. I think it's official Rob Shepherd, but yeah, but you'll find out if you go with that one's best. I'm on Instagram as official Rob Shepherd. You can find me on the TerraTract website. I do have a website of my own, but I've hardly ever used it because I'm crap. And if you want to stalk me because I don't have enough stalkers. So.
All righty. Me, I am Richard White, your CEO, whatever you want to call me, for LitCon, stepping in for Becky Naron. And you can find me personally for my books, which are nowhere near horror. I mean, I guess you could think it might have a little bit of a horror theme in some of my poetry on Shattered Glass, because it does deal a lot of with demons and how I faced my PTSD. So, and that can be some scary shit. But anyways, you can find me over at authorrichardwhite.com. And if you're looking for me on LitCon, go to litcon.org. We're going to sign off, but please join us. You guys here in the panel, you're all welcome to join us if you're able to stay awake. I know a couple of you are across the pond, so you're going to probably slip into a deep coma for at least a few hours. But all of you are invited to join us
I've
over
joked
at...
awake with a couple of the old